Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Femininja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I have a fascinating guest with me today, and she's really special because she has a story to share with us that really resonates with me. And I think it's going to resonate with you as well, even if you're not a healthcare worker. Her name is Jennifer Johnson. She is a wife, mother, and registered nurse in Ontario, Canada, who spent the last 16 years of her career working in ERs all over Ontario. She is the author of the recently published book titled Nursing Intuition: How to Trust Your Gut, Save Your Sanity, and Survive Your Career. Jen, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh my God, Cheryl, thank you so much for having me.
This is going to be so much fun because, people really don't think about what's going on the other side of the bed, when you're a
Yeah.
patient. And as I told you, I've had a long 40-year career in the medical field. And at least I wasn't, didn't have kids at that time and stuff. So I think being a mom and a nurse and working in the emergency room at the same time, how did you keep your sanity?
I didn't. I was out of my mind. Especially COVID,
Mm.
the kids were 4 and 5 and a half at the
Oh,
time. And there was no daycare originally, right? So when everything originally shut down, there was no daycare. My husband was also essential. And so he was going to work Monday to Friday, 8 to 4. And then I swapped to
oh,
straight nights. So 12 hours, during the night, you'd stay up all night and then you'd have to be up all day with the kids, stay up all night,
oh
stay
my
up all
God.
day. By the end of the 3 shifts, I was completely out of my mind. And then for good measure, just chuck on like a ton of fear and anxiety and
Mm-hmm.
the unknown and policies changing morning to
Mm-hmm.
afternoon to night,
Mm-hmm.
every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing major. It was fine.
But yeah, I mean, and you're right. Everything was changing almost like minute by minute. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
this is the new policy. Oopsie, this is the new policy now. Well, we don't like that. We're going to get rid of that. It almost seemed like it was intentional in a way. I mean, I wasn't working, of course, then. I
Yeah.
had since moved on with my life to other things, but I mean, and this is the bizarre thing that still kind of shocks me to this day. When COVID first came out, and my husband and I, who was a respiratory therapist too, we were looking at each other, especially those first 2 weeks, and I'm going, something doesn't feel right. Something is not
Yep.
right. We have spent, between the two of us, how many years working around horrible infectious diseases. I started so long ago, and so did he, when like the ventilator circuits were open. So everything
Yeah.
the patient was exhaling, we were inhaling. We survived. And so it was like,
My
something
God.
isn't right here. But on the other hand, there was a part of me deep inside that said, I want to go back.
Mhm.
I want to be a part of that. Because I don't know if it's that adrenaline rush or being part of a team, but it was like, I have skills. I'm not afraid. Of course, my skills were pretty rusty, but I would have loved to go back into the field and see what I could do at that time.
Yeah, it's one of those mindsets where you're a helper for life, right? Like you can't turn it off. My husband
Hmm.
used to be a paramedic, now he's infection control, which is the hilarious part of all this. And like you can't beat the paramedic out of him. Like you
No.
cannot. He's still, anytime there's anybody like pulled over to the road, like he wants to
Hmm.
stop and he still eats
Hmm.
like a paramedic. Like, you get no breaks. You never know when the next call is coming in. So he like
Hmm.
just inhales food. You can't break that cycle because it becomes, not just so much a part of your psyche, but a part of your ego also. And your
Hmm.
your whole identity starts to revolve around it, which is a lot of the problem.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And it does take a toll on you.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
You can't do anything for yourself without feeling like you're letting somebody else down. It's insane.
I remember one time we were driving up to the mountains to go skiing on this lovely ski trip. And on the way up, and this was right after cell phones, you could, you know, you could call and we didn't have
Yeah.
to stop and pull over at the side of the road. So I told my husband, I says, "Give me your phone. I think I forgot to tell somebody something." So there we were driving up to the mountains, and I had already given my report and told them, I said, "But there's another little detail about this patient and that
Yep.
patient." It was like, let it go. It's in somebody else's, it's their
Very
responsibility
capable
now.
hands.
Right. Right. So let me ask you this then. How did you end up, first of all, how did you end up in nursing? Was it this a lifelong pursuit, desire that you had to help people? And how in the world did you end up being in the emergency room all the time?
So I never once wanted to be a nurse. It never really was on my radar. I only had one friend growing up whose mom was a nurse, but she was public health, so she was Monday to Friday, 8 to 4.
Mm,
So it was never on my radar, let alone shift work.
yeah.
And it wasn't until I went to university, I started in a biology degree. I was a year in and went like, oh, this isn't fun, but kept pushing through because, you've signed up, you've paid the money, you're like, okay, I got to push through kind of thing. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until second year that I failed the first half of organic chemistry, which was a year-long course, which, theoretically put me back an entire year because of this
Mm-hmm.
course. I'm going, okay, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. This is not it at all. And a buddy of mine in university was in first year nursing. And so we'd like pour over her medical textbooks all the time. Like, okay, this is cool. This is interesting. This is what I'd really like to be doing. So was lucky enough to swap into a 3-year program
Mm-hmm.
and finish it at a 4-year pace, only because I already had like a year and a half
Mm-hmm.
worth of stuff behind me. And it was life changing. You're
Mm-hmm.
going, holy cow, this is a whole other universe, let alone
Mm-hmm.
a language.
Mm-hmm.
And getting into it. And then when I graduated, I met my now husband, and there was an opening up at his hospital in this teeny tiny town of less than 5,000. And so he's like, "Oh, come live with me and we can continue dating and you
Mm-hmm.
can work at the hospital. It'd be great." That hospital, was so awful, just personalities wise. It just,
Oh,
it was so small that it was just me for a merge. That was it. That was the whole staff.
wait a minute.
And
Wait,
then
wait. So, okay.
one.
So were you the lone nurse?
So in the emergency, I was. Then you'd had one registered nurse and two LVNs or RPNs. So the 2-year college course with them also to kind of manage the inpatients, and that was it. So if something major happened, a car wreck or somebody hit a moose, the ultimate Canadianisms,
Mhm.
you were so strapped for staff. It was unbelievable. You were lucky if it was a day shift because then the one manager could come and help. But you were calling in the next shift early. You were calling in other people to come in and help. Because if you needed to intubate somebody, we didn't have any ventilators. So there were instances where I was bagging somebody for 8 hours, waiting
Oh my
for flight to
God.
get there, to pick them up, to transfer them to Thunder Bay, which was the closest major
Mhm.
center with which was like a 2-hour drive. And so it was a very interesting learning experience, but
Mhm.
um looking back,
Okay.
I'm so glad I did it before I knew what, Southern medicine, like really well supported medicine looked like, because I don't know if I would have survived going from knowing what should be happening to, oh, we don't have any of that.
Oh my God.
We're just gonna try and make do.
Oh my God. So I just have to ask, during that 8-hour time frame where you were manually
Yep.
hand bagging, so for the
Handbagging.
people who don't know you, you could see them on the emergency room shows and the medical shows with the Laerdal or the Ambu bag, ventilating the patient. So you sat there or stood there for 8 hours. Did you ever get a break to go to the bathroom, or did you have to hold it for 8 hours?
Nope.
Oh.
Held it. Right? We're so good at
Hmm.
holding it. And that was, that was like a year or two into my career. So I, young and just going like, just hold it, hold it, hold it, because like there's nobody else to lean on.
Right.
I have to do this. We were lucky enough that there was staff who came in to be able to help us. Somebody's running around doing meds, somebody's doing cutting all the patient's clothes off. Somebody else
Hmm.
is getting ready for transfer, and this, that, and the other. And it was chaos. It was
I
absolute chaos.
I want to go back to how cool it was when you were
Yes.
looking at the medical books again. Your
Yeah.
friend with the nursing books and and they are so cool.
They're so cool.
They're so cool.
They're
But
so cool.
then all of a sudden, eventually you go from looking at these medical textbooks, which are clean and, hey, it's paper and it's
Yes.
really cool and exciting, to, oh my God, this is a human body.
And family attached to it. Oh my
Yes.
God, they don't warn you about the families.
No, nope,
Oh,
nope.
there's
It's,
no interpersonal learning about families that there
yeah,
really should have been because,
yeah.
a family can make or break patient care
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
the way around just because, if you've got somebody who, is thankful, willing to help and oh, I'm so sorry, let me get out of the way kind of thing,
Right.
um, you know, that's fine. But then you've got the family members who are like in your face and you need to fix this and they're
Yeah.
angry and upset and scared, just as much as the
Hmm.
patient is.
Hmm.
But like they're hindering more on aggressive than anything else.
Hmm.
And that takes a long time to learn how to
To manage that.
de-escalate people.
Hmm. I was
Yeah,
really
read people.
fortunate in my respiratory therapy career. I was in what we call a country club hospital for a long time. And typically, when you saw the respiratory therapist come around the corner, everybody was so happy to see us. So, that
Oh,
was
for
good.
sure.
But then it's like, okay, I have to do things to make sure that this turns out okay. And I never picked respiratory therapy. It was one of those things I fell into. Never even saw. Oh, by the way, I flunked organic as well. No, it was
Hey,
biochemistry. Biochemistry.
there you
I got
go.
a D in it, and I was so excited that I got a D. Ended up retaking it like 20 years later and did very well. But hey, that's what 20 years does for you.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I kind of fell into it. And of course, I have four sisters, and my parents put all of us through college. I'm number three out of five. And I didn't even pick it. My sister, who's a year older than me, and my mom picked respiratory for me because I did everything. I followed that sister. I followed in her footsteps in every single thing we did. So she went to school to be a med tech. And then a
Hmm.
year later, it was my plan. I was going to go to the same college to be a med tech. Well, my sister came home on her first break. You're going to love this. And she told my mother, Mom, Cheryl can't do this. She's not smart enough. It's too hard of a program. But there's this new field back then. This is how long ago it was. There's this new field called inhalation therapy. And I think she might be able to do that. The curriculum's not as hard. How the heck would she know?
Exactly. Oh my God.
So
Well,
I know.
siblings, right?
Siblings, right? And, of course, my mother knew that I wasn't all that smart. So, they picked it and I went there. So the first 2 years was at the college. And then I didn't see my first patient until my junior year.
Yeah.
By that time, like you said, you've already invested so much into it. My parents had paid 2 years of college. I, how could I say this is not for me? Because it really wasn't.
Yeah.
And it was like the only other thing I could do that my prereqs would have transferred over would be going into nursing. And it was like, you know,
Ugh.
yeah, yeah. Well, what difference does it make? So I just stuck with what I did. And eventually, I mean, I did love it, but it was at year 17 that I really hit the wall and I said, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just it. Sometimes you really do hit a wall and,
Hmm.
they keep saying, oh, there's a shortage of nurses. No, there's not. There's no shortage of nurses. There's just a shortage of nurses willing to put up with the absolute bare minimum.
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know? So,
Hmm.
and this generation coming out, man, oh, man, are they on it? They have no qualm, they have no loyalty to anybody, nor should they.
Good.
It's all about themselves and what's going to work best for them and their mental health. Like I ended up giving
Good.
a speech or like a lecture to first year nursing students, like first month, first year, and all of their questions were like, how do I prevent burnout? How do I manage time
Wow.
manage, how do I do time management? How do I manage work-life balance? How do I take care of myself? And I'm like, I don't think I've ever asked myself those questions ever, like let
Hmm.
alone the first month of nursing school. So I'm like, okay, guys, I'm going to be real honest. Get yourself at least two therapists, one main therapist, and then a backup should the first therapist not be available.
Hmm.
B, you're probably going to pick up some unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Oh,
Be
yeah.
forewarned, if they help make it easier in the interim, it's going to be a pain in the long run. So just be aware.
Hmm.
Um, and like, if you don't love it, get out because
Hmm.
you have to love it because it's the only real way that you can make sense of what we do on a daily basis and how
Right.
much we personally sacrifice to do this. So if you don't love it, find something else. It can be within nursing, it can be on the nursing edges. There's
Hmm.
so much to do that if you kind of think you want to go this route, but you're not sure, power
Hmm.
through if you need to. But just know like there are so many options for a nursing degree that you don't have to be bedside. So
Hmm.
just be forewarned, it takes a lot.
Well, it's nice to know that there are those options for people who are maybe even listening to this now and are in nursing that, like, I got to get out or thinking about nursing or whatever. It's not like it was years ago.
Yeah.
When I first started, in my career as respiratory, there was nowhere else to go. I mean, eventually you got, okay, home health, which was like, oh God, who wants to do that? And a few other things, but you didn't have as much options or opportunities.
Oh
So,
yeah. This
mhm,
whole, even just this AI nursing push where you can have a virtual nurse kind of oversee a set number of patients, and then you've got aides and practical nurses or LVNs on the floor to obviously do all the physical things that need to be done. But
mhm,
like you can have an RN kind of oversee people and kind of manage things that way and you've got direct hookup to their vital signs machine and this, that, and the other.
mhm.
So it's an interesting concept, but I'm just like, we're really losing that personal touch because like,
Right.
would I really want to be in a hospital where somebody could theoretically like look in on me at any point where maybe I did just need like a little bit of privacy for a moment just to like cry and lose it and then not have
Right.
them come back into, hey, we heard you crying. Like, do you
Oh,
want to talk about it? Like, I think I'd be like, no, thanks. I'm gonna politely refuse.
yeah.
Thank
That's
you.
interesting. I had a guest recently who was describing her experience with, was it myasthenia gravis or Guillain-Barré? I
Oh
can't
yeah,
remember, but basically she was pretty much paralyzed. And she says the loss of humanity and human dignity, she says where people were, she says loss of control, people were coming in and out of my room at any time of day and night or whatever. And she says I couldn't do anything for myself, couldn't go to the bathroom I couldn't do anything. And that's, from a patient standpoint, and from somebody who's been a medical provider thinking about being a patient or being a patient, it's absolutely terrifying.
yeah. It's not pleasant because I mean, in our day, 12 hours can go by in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
But when you really think about somebody being confined to a bed,
Mm-hmm.
having being forced to listen to whoever's screaming in the room or what and being at the mercy of, how your nurse is feeling that day, if they're feeling overtly chatty or not, or they're run off their feet or they're short staffed,
Mm-hmm.
I can't, listening to the dinging alone is
Yeah.
is horrific.
Mhm.
Oh, I can't. I still dream about the dings every now and again. I'll like, have a nightmare and I'll be like, oh, the dinging,
Oh
like
God.
the cardiac monitors.
One of the things that, oh, it was the suction equipment that got
Oh,
me. I remember one time I did a double shift. So it was a 16-hour shift. I was much younger, but I mean, I could barely drive home. And once I finally got home, and I'll be perfectly honest, I poured myself a beer. Thank God I had one in
absolutely.
the fridge
Right.
and went to bed. And all I could hear was the sound of the suction equipment.
Oh.
Ah, yeah. Then I had to get up the next morning and drive in for another double. It was just crazy. That was at the
Oof.
beginning of my career.
And again, you think, oh, I'm putting myself out there. I'm really helping the team. I'm
Hmm.
overextended, but that's fine. I'm just trying
Yeah.
to prove my worth and
I'm trying to help
pass
people. I'm trying to do what I've been taught all my life to put the needs of others before the
first.
needs of myself. Took me
Well,
50 years to figure that one out.
it took me almost 40,
Well,
so
there you
we're
go.
just about like
So another thing that always amazed me, and then I want you to, we're going to get into the book, but what always amazed me, even at this late date when I look back on my career, how some of the things that we dealt with, because, I was in and out of critical care, the emergency room, pediatrics. I had to go into neonatal a couple of times. That was a nightmare.
yeah,
But all of these things that we saw and that we did, there was never any support for us. I mean, I can't tell you how many hands I held, how many, you know, brows I wiped, how much comforting words I gave to patients and their families and stuff. But it was like then all of a sudden it's like, well, you're on your own. You have to deal with what this is. You know, you figure it out. There was no
100%.
support. There was only one time where we had an incident at the hospital and they had like a little review about it because it happened in the psych ward. So, of course, you know, that team was on it. And it's like, we need to talk about this and
Yeah.
everybody needs to vent. So,
Yeah. It's, you know, nothing changes until somebody dies, unfortunately.
right,
It's,
right.
you know, you can warn people about, you know, impending doom that's looming due to, you know, physically what's going on in the department. You know, we're supposed to be running at 18 beds. We're now running anywhere from 21 to 24 beds. You
Oh,
know, we're using up the hallway space. It's gotten to the point where there's been so many admit no beds, like borders, that we've gone outside the department and gone up the hall, 4 beds, and there's no
God.
suction, there's no oxygen, there's no call bell. So somebody has to sit out in that hallway 24/7 because, like, heaven forbid somebody need you, and everybody is stacked one right in front of the other in front of the other. So it's like, oh, how demeaning it is.
Yeah.
Like this is
It's almost
awful.
barbaric. You know, my husband and I
100%.
really like to watch, we were watching this one series, I think it was called The Nick, and it was like in the 1800s New York. Oh, talk about
Yeah.
barbaric, you know, but
Yeah.
it was just amazing. And it was almost like, yeah, they're stacking people like logs. And it's like, oh, we've come a long way in some ways.
Kind of.
You
in
know, it's
some
just like
in
in some
some
ways.
areas. You know, we've tried to come forward, but yeah, it's not until these critical incidences that somebody
Right.
finally goes, "Oh, do you guys need to, like, I don't know, talk about it?" And you're like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, yeah, we
Hmm.
do. We
Hmm.
really really need to talk about it."
Hmm.
And it's just unfortunate that it's these critical events that then,
Hmm.
you know, it it's the trigger, right? So
Right.
we had something the other night where somebody came in and wasn't like low blood pressure, like super low blood pressure to start, but they were still awake and kind of talking a bit. And they just declined to the point of finally going agonal and then losing a pulse and
Oof.
CPR and doing the full works, and we ended up calling it. But it's just like, you know, does everybody want to talk about it? And you're like, yeah, yeah, we do,
Yeah.
because it's always harder when somebody comes in conscious
Right.
and then declines, because, you know,
Yes.
there's this weird level of hope that, like, oh, it's just a low blood, like, I can remember
Yeah.
somebody saying, like, oh, EMS is patched in, there's a low blood pressure coming in. You're like, oh, okay, it's a low blood pressure, woo, like, no big deal. And I was super nonplussed about it. I was like, okay, we'll figure them out and off we go. And the fact that they coded, we actually called
Yeah.
it like within, it took them 14 minutes to code from the time they walked in the, well, walked, but rolled in the door. 14 minutes to code. We ran it for about 25 more minutes and then ended up calling it. And it's like, who can we talk about that? Like, that was
Yeah.
weird. That was just, and I remember saying to my doc afterwards, um, do you ever actually get in your head about what we see on the daily?
Yeah.
Like, what we do, you know, how we're in people's lives, what we're actually doing. Like, do you ever have that moment where you kind of actually like give in to that feeling of really feeling it? And she goes, yeah, yeah, I do. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm lost in
Yeah.
existential crisis right now. Just give me a moment. But like, we do what for a living?
Hmm. I know. I'll never forget. I still remember this. It was I was in my 20s at the time. My God, that was a long time ago. And this guy came in, you know, he had actually had an arrest in the ambulance or whatever. I don't know if he was having chest pain or what. And he was decked out. He had these, you know, it was a summer day. So he had these like not long shorts on and a nice golf shirt. And, you know, I mean, he just looked so good. But, you know, so, you know, we're doing CPR and, yeah, we finally had to call it. And you could see there was something lumpy in his shorts or whatever. And one of the
Oh
guys
no.
reached in and pulled out like these three brightly colored golf balls.
Oh,
He was on his way to play golf. And it was just like
it was just
one
another
minute.
day.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the fun side of medicine.
Well, it my least favorite is when the phone starts ringing in the pants pocket after we like
Oh,
usually after we've just called it and the phone starts ringing and like it stops and starts again and stops and starts again and stops and you're just like, oh, I'm like it's way above my pay grade. I'm like,
yeah,
let's hope we've got somebody on file for this poor
yeah,
person and we can get them down because like the number of times somebody called, they obviously knew that something was up. So
yeah.
it's
I never
not
had to
great
deal
that
with
way.
that because, as I said, it was so long ago, cell phones didn't exist. But my personal favorite was, I hated working on Thanksgiving when it snowed. I'm in
Yeah.
Denver. In Colorado, we get a lot of snow. But a snowy Thanksgiving was just an absolute nightmare because guys would, older men especially, after their turkey dinner, they'd go out and start shoveling, and it's like, bad idea, bad idea.
It's the same in Canada. The
Yeah,
exact same in Canada. It's
yeah.
just like, oh, the chest pains from shoveling. There it is. Okay, we're into that season. Okay, it's
Hmm.
official. Like you always
Hmm.
wait for the first one of the season. You're just like, who's gonna do it? It's the same with the frozen turkey in deep fryer. There's always one. Every year there's always one. You're just like, who's gonna do it? Oh.
So I have to ask you this because, people who are listening to this might think, well, that's kind of like,
Oh, we're so
they've had this,
warped.
yeah, macabre sense of humor or whatever. But that is actually a coping mechanism that I think is not as unhealthy as a lot of the other coping mechanisms we have all used in the past. But you do develop this really weird and twisted sense of humor because
Oh,
that's how you
so
survive.
bad. It's so bad because really it's truly the saying of like you're either laughing or you're crying.
Right.
So if in order for me to keep it together, another 5 minutes, another 10 minutes, another 20
Hmm.
minutes till the end of shift, uh, we all say things that and every now and again somebody will say something and we kind of look at each other, we're like, ooh, that was extra dark. Like, are you okay? And we all kind of laugh and you're just like, you kind of make a little mental note to like, okay, no, 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 like next time we have like a moment alone, like I need to check in on that person because that was like
Hmm.
super extra dark.
So I think that one of the things, and I don't know if you've experienced this, because I know you've had some really strange experiences just by looking at some of the things that, your profile with, bullying and all kind of other stuff like that. But at some level, you really do create bonds with your coworkers for the most part, because nobody else understands what you're going through.
No, the trauma bonds are deep.
Hmm.
And in nursing it's kind of, you hold the bum cheek, I'll wipe kind of
Right.
friendships that, you've been through literally everything together.
Hmm.
And it's true. Like even my husband, like, he used to be paramedic. He's seen a lot of stuff too, but he's been out for so long. And, every now and again I'll come home and I'll text him and be like, wine at the door. And he goes, ooh, like, I
Yeah.
know it's bad
Yeah.
if the wine needs to be at the door.
At the
And
door, not
at
in.
the door. Like not
Hmm.
even just like, just set out a glass kind of thing for us. Like, no,
Yeah.
no, no, wine at the door.
Hmm.
And he goes, do you want to talk about it? And I know that he's like, he wants to help me and he wants to be supportive, but he's not
Doesn't
there
want to
anymore.
go there. Yeah.
And he doesn't want to go there because he can get triggered just as easily as I can.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, no, it's fine. Just give me the bottle.
Hmm. So my husband worked in this it's a huge teaching hospital. It's kind of like a city hospital. I was at the country club, one of the country club hospitals, and I mean, he was in the rough spot.
The thick of it.
And he loved it. I mean, and he never came home traumatized or, I mean, he had only had like one or two times that I could remember that he was upset about something. And it was like, how do you do that? I just don't understand.
Something tells me he's just buried it way deeper than some of us,
Oh, he's really good at, yeah, pretending or, yeah, that didn't happen. Yeah, he's good at that. Trust me.
And that's guys, right? Like, oh,
Right.
it's fine, it's all fine. You're like, you're not fine. Like,
Yeah.
I know you're not fine.
It's really funny because the one coworker I was with in the ICU when we got that call for the psych ward that one time,
Mhm.
and we just looked at each other, went, "Oh yeah, there's a code, in the psych ward." And typically somebody just dropped a lit cigarette in a waste paper basket, so we go running down there expecting that's what was going to happen, and that was not what happened. And the
Yeah.
guy that I was with He was one of those, nothing touched him, nothing bothered him. He was just so irreverent for everything, but it rattled him.
Yeah. I mean, we've all been there, right? Like,
Hmm.
and even working the ER 16 years, like it's still, there's moments that just get you and you're just
Hmm.
like, oh crap, they've cracked the shield of the ER tough, you like to hold up the thought process that, you're a tough, nothing can
You got
break
the
through.
armor
And
on. You
I've got
got
the
the
armor.
armor.
Like, if you think you're gonna cuss me out and have me react, I sorely mistaken. Like, I don't really get like worked up unless there's actually like a physical threat to my physical
Hmm.
safety. So,
Hmm.
unless you're coming at me with a pair of scissors, which has happened. I don't, oh yeah. To be fair, elderly gentleman, super confused, had torn off his gown, so he was completely naked, took the scissors, had cut the catheter. So
Oh,
at least like the catheter was still technically in him, kind of hanging out, and so he was dripping urine a bit. And he was kind of like trying to come at you, but you're just like, okay, we need to be very. This is an interesting scenario. Like, how do we tackle this? Literally,
God.
without breaking bones. Like, how do we
Right.
tackle this and not get soaked in
Protect
urine at the same
yourself.
time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So it's an interesting. I mean, granted, it's not always like that. It's
Right. But
really
it does
for the
happen.
it does happen, and it's to the point where I lovingly refer working in the ER as being in an abusive relationship with the public. So when COVID happened and everybody was so thankful and the food was nonstop and the banging of the pots and pans and the thank yous and the line jumping and all these things, I'm like, I'm not comfortable with this at all. This is so weird. I'm so visibly shaken by all of this
Hmm.
because, I knew what it would take for that kind of change in personality from the general public would
Right.
mean that we're on death's door.
Hmm.
And, we had attorneys very early on who were trying to help out, and they said, we'll happily do everybody's wills for free. That's for the front line. And we're like, oh, great. Thank you for we understand that you're like trying to be generous and contributing with your time and all this, and we all just kind of looked at each other and we're like,
Not helping.
so we're gonna die. Like, okay, this is so we're not expected to live. And truly, like everybody was like, there was no sick time. There was no sick time for months because we all were saving it in case we ended up intubated and proned and in the ICU for months on end. Like we
Oh
just
my
were like,
God.
let's save our sick time. And our boss at the time, who was a piece of work, used that as, oh, look, I made a change to the schedule, which also like damn near killed us. But I made a change to the schedule, and look, there all of a sudden there was no more sick time. I'm like, do you want it? And so she was like taking that credit for herself, and I'm like, do you want to like just let people know that it was because of COVID, not because of you? Like we all continued to work and ran the department despite you. But at least it got her out of the department. And now she's somewhere else in the great wide corporation, but she's I don't need to deal with her anymore.
Oh my God. I can't believe that. Wow. That's just amazing. I mean, we
Yeah.
had incidences and things, back in my career, but as I said, it was a long time ago. The physicians and stuff were pretty superior, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah.
there was nothing quite like that. It got kind of like that toward the end, but
Yeah.
I knew it was time to go and I was leaving, so it was all right. But yeah, I mean, so how do you cope with something like that? Okay, let's go back to the title of the book. Hang on a second here. It's Nursing Intuition. Okay. Okay. Let's stop right there before we
Okay.
even continue on. Because I think, especially as women, we have a tremendous amount of intuition. We're born with it, but as we start growing up or get, mature, it's like, oh, you're just making it up, or oh, that's just women's, hysteria, or, it's just women trying to get what they want. I mean, when I was a little girl, men revered women's intuition. And I used to hear it all the time. If my wife says this, then I listen to her because her
Yeah.
intuition is never wrong.
Yeah.
Where did we get to the point that intuition is wrong? So now we have to reconnect with it.
I don't know, but at least in the medical fields, everything's evidence-based as it rightfully should be.
Hmm.
And so during COVID, I completely snapped, should have not been working, but continued to because I can push through. And so got to the point of, if I was to die, how would I explain to my two kids that mom chose to continue to go to work? Because we all had the opportunity not to go. You just had to be written off. Um, it but you continued to go. That was it, right? And so I started writing down a couple of my really good stories about, these are the times I helped and these are the things that I did. And very quickly, the good stories were like pushed aside and the trauma stories that I'd never dealt with came flying back up. And so writing them and going through it and kind of sitting back after all of it going like, okay, well, what does this all mean?
Hmm.
Like there's a little bit more to this. And so I was listening to a podcast or Llewellyn, who's a metaphysical publisher out in the States. They were having online book fairs. And so the authors were talking about their books. And the one book was Intuition at Work. And I'm like, intuition at work. I'm like, I use my intuition all the time at work. And it was just this snap of like, that's the theme. That's it. And so I went back and sure enough, here's this thread weaving all the way through. And I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, so I understand that that's what's happened. I trust that. But, in this age of misinformation, disinformation, because it was like August of 2020 when I wrote everything down finally, I was like, okay, I can't bring this forward without risking my license. If there's not science behind this, like
Right.
it could just be an opinion piece, whatever. So went on a deep dive, and sure enough, there's so much information on intuition, like so many studies, and then
Hmm.
specifically intuition in nursing. There's so
Hmm.
much peer-reviewed evidence on it. And I'm like, oh my God, it's all here. It's all
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, so if it's peer-reviewed and evidence-based, we were taught in nursing school, if that's the way it is, you have to teach it and that's what you follow.
Hmm.
Despite what your personal beliefs may be, that's what you follow. And the more I then began to open up to coworkers to say like, hey, like I just don't know. My gut's telling me that something's off. Like I just, depending on who you're speaking to, you change the language a little bit.
Hmm.
The docs call it spidey sense, and that's an
Hmm.
acceptable term by physicians. We tend to be a little bit more kind of demure with it, where we usually can get our point across easier if we act like, oh, we just don't know. Like, oh, I
Hmm.
don't know. Like instead of
Hmm.
being confident and aggressive and kind of
Hmm.
like very in the forefront with it, we tend to lean towards like, oh, I just don't know. Like, could you just check on the patient in three? Like, oh, something's off. I don't know. And that's how we play it most often. And so this is just, well, here it is. Like now we can talk about it and bring it out of that 3 a.m. conversation
Hmm.
that, we gib gab and it's like, okay,
Hmm.
well, what was your last bad encounter and what was your last
Hmm.
ghost story? And now, when was the last time you trusted your gut?
Yeah.
And, we've all got these stories,
Hmm.
women especially, only
Hmm.
because our intuition is very much linked to our survival.
Hmm.
You're
Hmm.
anybody from the age of 12 can tell you, I didn't get good feelings from that person. I didn't like that
Hmm.
scenario. I didn't like being at that party. I shouldn't have gotten into that vehicle. All those kind of things, we're so used to that we trusted implicitly.
Hmm.
But when it comes to bringing it into work, we doubt ourselves. We think that,
Hmm.
oh, we're being too sensitive, or we're not picking up on something, or we're picking up on something that's not there. We're making it up, that kind of thing. And it's not until those physicians who doubted us,
Hmm.
then something bad happens and there's a critical incident, and then they go, oh, I
Should have
guess I
listened.
should have listened to the nurses,
Hmm.
and it's almost like a rite of passage for residents that if there's one or two, who typically pop off a little bit and have got
Hmm.
that kind of chauvinistic attitude where I'm the doctor, you're just the nurse, and
Hmm.
you better watch out because we're with the patient. You're
I
not.
was
You're
just going to say, who spends all the time with the patients?
yeah.
Who's there all
Who's
the
watching their
time?
color change? Who's
Right.
watching their respirations change,
Yep.
the
Checking their
work of breathing?
vitals. Yep.
Yeah, all of
Yep.
it. All of a sudden now they're confused. They're picking at the
Right.
air, like what's happening?
Hmm.
And so, relying on that and bringing it out into the open is a very new
Hmm.
concept. But yet, the more I talk about it, the more others go, "Oh, well, yeah, I've been doing that for years." I'm like, "I know you've been doing it for years. We just don't talk about it, or we don't talk about it in confident terms that we know
Right,
what we're doing."
right.
It was just a shot in the dark. Oh, it was just a one-off kind of thing. And there's so much information just about, insight versus pattern
Hmm.
recognition versus experience and
Hmm.
and all this other stuff. So it all comes in together. And, when I teach, it's coming at it from the angle of, okay, you're new to the ER or you're new to medicine, you're watching your patient, you're just not sure, you go to the doc, you have the doc take another look. Just by you having the doc take another touch point on that patient, you're still improving patient outcomes. Even if there was
Right.
nothing that needed to be improved upon, if the patient wasn't as sick as maybe you thought they were, the patient's outcomes are still going to improve. So why not continue to learn to trust it, to work on it, to being able to advocate for it. And really, if you want to call it anything, call it advocating.
Hmm.
That term is highly acceptable in
Hmm.
nursing.
Hmm.
So why not try it out and see just how right you can be.
Hmm. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. So that's the intuition and how to trust your gut. So I think
How to trust your gut.
we covered that. Okay, now here's my favorite part is to save your sanity and survive your career. That's a huge, huge thing to tackle.
Yeah.
Saving your sanity first. How do you do that? Because I mean, the thing is, you're people don't understand if they've never been in that situation or worked in that type of an environment. One minute you're walking down the hall, nothing's happening, and the next thing, all hell breaks loose. And I mean, literally, all hell
Yep.
breaks loose. So you go from just being like, to, that fight or flight just
Yep.
kicks in.
The adrenaline's great
You
once you
betcha.
learn once you learn how to harness the adrenaline, because again, same thing. When I first started, my husband and I we were driving back and forth from his hometown to Thunder Bay, and it's a 2 hour drive. Well, sure enough, it's winter, it's slippery, it's snowy. Somebody had, gotten in an accident, and one was pinned in the vehicle, and so Trevor put on paramedic mode and went into full force. But you're out in the middle of nowhere, and so he's like, just talk to her, just like calm her down, all these things. And I can just remember my hands shaking so badly and I just my voice was trembling and I felt cold and I was shaking all over and everything was fine. She ended up going out to Thunder Bay, whatever. And I asked Trevor, I'm like, "Hey, like I don't understand what's happening." And he goes, "That's the adrenaline. That's the flow." He goes, "It's new right now. It's very hard to, you're not used to it. You're not sure how to hone it or kind of like, laser
Mm-hmm.
focus it,
Mm-hmm.
but you'll get there. But just know that that's totally normal. It's going to take some time to kind of wear off. You're going to be very, very shaky. So we'll wrap you up in warm blankets and warm you up kind of thing. But, that's what that is. And, taking that now into the ER, it can be one of the biggest saving
Mm-hmm.
graces that, especially the 88 or the ADHD in the ER is strong. You really can't last in the ER without either diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because, the quick turnarounds, the in, the out, there's always
Yep.
something going on. It keeps us interested and it keeps
Mm-hmm.
us kind of moving and going that way. And then when the adrenaline does hit, the
Mm-hmm.
laser focus that
Mm-hmm.
comes from that is insane, which,
Mm-hmm.
if you were medicated, you probably know exactly what that feels like.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where you have to take those emotions and work them or make them work for you instead of
Mm-hmm.
against you. So figuring out and honing it a bit is key.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, using your downtime, you learn Murphy's Law very quickly. Do what you can when you can,
Mm-hmm.
because you never know what's going to walk through the door or be
Mm-hmm.
called in the next 5 minutes. So, don't wait to do that dressing change or don't,
Mm-hmm.
don't do a lot of things that the floors would schedule.
Hmm.
But for us, it's like, no, you've got a minute, you better get it done because
Hmm.
Murphy's Law, if you don't, something's going to come in, it's going to completely, shoot your shot or shoot
Hmm.
your shift to crap, and you're
Hmm.
going to be running for the next 6 hours. So do it now, so it's off your plate, it's done, you don't have to worry about it, and then you can disappear into the recess room if you need to.
Oh yeah, I always knew where to go where I could just melt down, and nobody else would be around. Yeah. So I don't do
It's
that in
one of those
public.
things where it's, you go to a new floor and you're like, okay, where do they keep the meds? Where are the warm blankets at? Where do I get water? And where do I pee? Is there a specific poop toilet that staff
Hmm.
uses? And then where do I go to cry?
Hmm.
Like,
Absolutely.
and what room is not haunted so that I can lay down on night
Oh,
shift?
that's a tough one. Yeah.
That is a
So
tough one.
I used to, I did a lot of work PRN around town. So I was, at a lot of other different hospitals and even went out of state one time. But I always had my formula when I was starting at a new hospital. The first thing I did was get to know the chaplains
Hmm.
and get to know the security.
Yep.
And those were like my two priorities, even over and above the private toilets.
Oh,
And then went to,
absolutely.
yeah, where to find the nooks and crannies where I could just go for some private cries.
Yes. Yeah. Getting to know the ward clerks also. The
Yes.
ward clerks typically will have been there for years and years and years and years and years, know all the drama, know all the backstory, know everything.
Hmm.
And same with the environmental aides or the housekeepers. Like they're always on point with they know exactly what's going on.
Hmm.
So they were the ones because we most of the hospitals I've worked in don't have security. They do now, but welcome to Canada. Um,
Oh my God, my face. I mean,
I
I'm
know.
I'm told I'm not allowed to play poker because I guess I have an expressive face, but it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we typically don't have a lot of security floating around, and we only have chaplains that we can call in. Like I think that I've only had one instance in 16 years where I've called for a chaplain and they've actually come in. I was like, "Oh my God." I'm like this is great. Go over here because like this isn't going well and you need to deal.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy. So what would you say, Jen, to somebody who really they're thinking about nursing, and I think sometimes nursing is glorified as this incredible profession that, my mom, as I said, had five girls. And there were three of us, my two older sisters and I. My mom had three little girls in 4 years.
Oof.
And I know, and it was a long
Mother.
time, bless her heart. And, she always wanted us to go to college, and, she hadn't gone. And my father was Eastern European. He was actually an immigrant from the former Czechoslovakia. And when she would talk about college, he's like, they don't go to college. They're girls. They don't need an education. Why would they go to college? And she was like, not go to college. I really want them to go to college. And he came home one day from work. And I guess he had had an epiphany. And he said to my mom, he says, you know what? They are going to go to college. And she was thrilled. She's like, well, what changed your mind? And I'm going to clean it up for the podcast, for the show. But he says, just in case one of them ends up with some jerk, but that's not the word he used, they would have something to fall back on.
Yep.
And so she was like, I don't care what the reason is. Okay, my girls are going to college. So then she decided that because, and this was in the 50s, okay, the 50s and 60s, the only professions that she knew was either nursing or teaching because those were the
Yep.
only two professions that were considered feminine professions,
Hmm.
and that we could go back to work part-time after we got married and had our kids.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, one was a teacher, the second one was med tech, I was the respiratory therapist. So we all did, we fell in line. None of us have kids. One of us never got married, and so it's really funny. It's like, well, you had this all planned out, but it didn't work out that way. But that was
Worked out
those were our choices.
better. Worked out better.
It did. It worked out better. Worked out very well. So, but anyway.
Yeah. You know, give it a try. See if there's any way to have a shadow day.
Mm,
You know, there are a lot of misconceptions about what, an ER actually looks like, how it actually operates. It's
hmm.
not Grey's Anatomy. As much as I love Grey's Anatomy, it's not Grey's Anatomy. there are a million different directions you can go in. So even if you do start it, you kind of like it, but you're not sure if,
Mm-hmm.
bedside is really where you're supposed to be. That's okay. That's absolutely okay. We need researchers, we need people in policy,
Mm-hmm.
we need politicians, we need all these different people. And to have a, nursing background would
Mm-hmm.
just be that much more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you feel like you want to go, do it. I'm not necessarily in the mindset of, nursing being a calling, just because I think it just reaffirms stereotypes. But if you're interested in making a difference, if you're interested in how things work in the human body and solving puzzles, um,
Mm.
for me, the ER is a love relationship because sometimes there's a puzzle that comes your way
Mm-hmm.
and in person form, and it's all you want to do is to help kind of put that last piece in to help that
Mm-hmm.
person feel better and to like,
Mm-hmm.
that was that, you said something or did something that really was that last missing chunk for that person. So now, we're going to go on this direction for maybe a chronic illness, or we're going to go on this direction that maybe it's a weird random injury that has sparked something, or somebody's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, done something so minuscule, but yet, it's a little bit more like House, where you're looking to solve the problems, but not to the rarity
Mm-hmm.
of House. um, but try and get shadow shifts, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's lots of way to start to enter
Mm-hmm.
nursing without actually entering nursing. So being a patient care tech, um,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be in the ER or long-term care, or whatever else,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a
Or
great way to
even like
start.
as a volunteer.
Yeah,
I mean, because I
volunteers are
think that
great.
would be the best thing
Volunteers,
to do.
that's eye-opening.
Yeah, like I said, I had absolutely no experience, and walked into that huge teaching hospital in the middle of Pittsburgh, going like, "You want me to do what?" No, you don't understand. I wasn't meant for this. I was meant for lovely things. I just went from spending the summer selling Estee Lauder at a local, local mall to you want me to do what?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No.
not my plan. No. Mm-mm. But,
And it
made
can
it
be
work
not
out.
part of the plan, and that's okay.
Hmm.
Like, there are a lot of us who have fallen into it, and it just, you want to call it destiny, you want to call it your soul's purpose.
Hmm.
That's where I'm coming from, is I was meant to be in this. I just
Hmm.
wasn't paying attention when maybe it was put in front of me
Hmm.
earlier.
Yeah.
I had to be kind of smacked across the face with that that fail, because
Hmm.
otherwise I probably would have continued on and pushed through the bio degree and had no idea what to do with it.
Hmm. So first, now I have been remiss because I haven't given you the big, woohoo, congratulations. I'm so proud of you for writing the book.
Oh, thank you. It's
Because
been a
Yes. So
long,
tell us
long
about the
time.
process and tell us when you realized, because I know you said you were writing these things down and just going like,
Mm,
oh, having those mental head smacking moments when you would just reread what you had.
yeah,
And it was, I guess, very cathartic, but as well as now very informative too.
yeah.
So when
It's
did you say, I'm going to do it, I'm going to write it, and I'm going to publish it?
So, August of 2020, I wrote the book in 6 weeks, is pretty
Oh,
much. I don't, but however, the caveat to that is that it was like 14 years of ER nursing that had led
okay.
up to that. So
Okay.
14 years of work mentally preparing for stories and whatnot prior to that
But
time.
still,
But
that's
still,
quite an accomplishment.
I don't remember writing it. I remember getting up really, really early. I remember staying up really, really late. I remember
Hmm.
any moment that I had, I was on the computer typing away and having to kind of come in and out of these stories several times, because the stories that I was originally writing were just the 2-minute little back and forth that, all the nurses have with each other about, things that went wrong or ways to learn kind of thing,
Hmm.
and having to go back into them and expand to actually, okay, like, let's put somebody in this scenario was highly triggering. So a lot of the stories I had to kind of
Wow.
come in and out and, you know, deal with.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden you're bawling and you're like, oh, here we
I
go
know.
again. Like, here, this
Yeah.
is 14, 15, 16 years ago, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I probably have to finally deal with it. So here we
Yeah.
are. Ended up, I thought, well, if this is going to be well received, and to put a little bit more oomph behind it, a traditional publishing route would be the
Yep.
smart way to go. So I applied to all my publishers. Everyone thought that nursing was too niche. So got all the rejection letters. Was actually very excited for my first rejection letter because I'm like, I'm officially an author because I got rejected. It's fantastic. And so
You're
got
following in the steps of Dr. Seuss because his
yeah.
was rejected over and over and over and over.
And so finally got that one that was like, no, we want it. I'm like, you're joking, right? Like, I can't believe this. So signed the contracts, got it all done, waited 2 years for it to finally move into its spot to move to editing.
Hmm.
We had started editing and we were maybe 3, 4 months in, and they said, you know what? We're actually going to go back to physiotherapy books. And I'm like, pardon me? They're like, yeah, we're going to give you your rights back, but we're going to go back to physiotherapy. I'm like, you're joking. I'm like, so,
Okay,
got the
so that
news.
experience in itself is another book. I'm
It's
just putting
it's
it out there.
horrid. It's absolutely horrid. Mind you, okay, so I like to look for the silver linings just because that's the only way I keep saying. The silver lining in that is, would I have been that would I've gone that hard into LinkedIn, into building my networks, into really getting my voice out there? Like, no, it's going to be traditionally published. Like, that's a big thing. And da, da, da. Like, would I have pushed that hard for the 2 years prior
Hmm.
had I not gotten that contract and signed it and the whole bit? Probably not. So silver lining is I had that 2 years that I built my network. I started to go on LinkedIn every day and build things and connect with people and start to look at how I can help and advertising and all this kind of stuff. So when they gave it back to me, I had my 2 day cry, and I'm like, I'm just gonna feel this because this is a big loss.
Hmm.
Ate the ice cream, cried myself to sleep, did the things. And after about 2 days, I was like, okay, well, now it's mine. And I didn't realize I was missing it until it was mine
Hmm.
again. I thought, okay, now I can do it my way. And, being the
Hmm.
stubborn ER nurse, that's the way that's got to go. So, very quickly finding an editor and
Hmm.
getting cover design and figuring out Amazon. And, you know, thankfully, they'd actually already given me kind of their list of timelines as to how
Hmm.
things went. So I already had this like layout of, here's what you do, da, 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 and here's how long it would take for us, kind of thing. And I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
like this is good to know, just to
Hmm.
all the different areas that I'm supposed to be hitting. And so, went off like a shot running. And of course, me being me, everything was kind of half cocked. So, had pre-orders, got a ton of pre-orders, which allowed me to get like a number one LinkedIn, or a number one
Amazon.
patient relations status, the all the
Yep.
things. But I had to put off releasing 2 months. Amazon was super pissed with me, so then I had to put it out there before it was quite ready. So I just didn't say anything. I'm like, oh my God, like Amazon's gonna have a freak out if I don't release the thing. And so having it partially done and then the editing took months longer than I anticipated,
Oh,
which I was like,
yes.
oh, okay. I anticipated 3, 4 months, and it took longer. So I was like, oh my
Hmm.
God, this is insane. So that took way longer. And then she's like, oh, now it's ready for a typesetter. I'm like, what's a typesetter? like, oh God, another cost. Like, oh, another cost.
Oh,
Okay.
it is very expensive to publish a
It's
book.
like $10,000 roughly per
Yeah.
book to get a good editor, to get a good designer, to get a good to do PR, to do put it in the places where it's got to go, to get promotional copies, then to give
Right.
people. Um, yeah, it was just a lot, but to finally get it done, and because it was kind of piecemeal, there are a couple of people who have got like very different versions from half edited to fully edited to then typeset to then I mucked up the back cover, so I had to fix the back cover, and oh my God, it was
Oh
just
my God.
such
Okay, so let me ask you this. When
yeah,
you finally got it done,
yeah,
okay, and you received your first printed copy of your book, and you opened that box and you picked that thing up and you held it in your hands,
yeah,
what was that like?
trauma. Just so much. like you can't believe it's real, like it's actually
Yeah.
happened. And it because it had been so rocky to get to that point and back
Yeah.
and forth and back and forth and covers not being right and this, that, and the other, you know, it still feels completely surreal. Like, what
Uh-huh.
do you mean it's on Amazon? Like, of
Well, you
course,
just
like
you just released it, right?
adjust, like just, and and then the
Oh yeah,
cover
hold it
and
up.
hold the
Yes.
cover. And so,
Yes. So
you
for the
know,
people who are on YouTube, they can see it. And actually, I could even use, if you don't mind, I could use the image of that as the thumbnail for YouTube.
absolutely. Yeah, it's just like
I love that cover.
thank you. I didn't realize that it's the same. So it's the two hands making the heart. And I didn't realize when I picked it that that's what I do to my kids when they get on the bus every day. And so here's
Oh,
the universe going like, haha, this is them still being involved
yeah.
and this kind of
So
thing.
now, how old are they now?
They are 9 and 10 and a half now.
Okay.
So completely chaotic. If you've heard them in the background, kudos because they weren't quiet.
No, I did not hear a thing. And even if I did, it would just add to the episode because it's real life,
The
right?
ambiance of the
Okay,
mother.
so now did they realize the magnitude of
I
what
don't,
mom has done just in writing the book? I mean, the magnitude of what you do every day when you go to work is probably just, hey, that's old news or yesterday's
yeah.
news or whatever. But geez, it's not everybody's mom who wrote a book.
Yeah. I don't think so. Like, it's kind of funny. My daughter, who's the sass pot, I'll be like, oh, you have to be quiet. Mom's going on another podcast. She's like, oh, another podcast? Is it about your book? And I'm like, yeah, it is. Like, what do you want? Like, and so she's like, oh, but then in the same token, she was asking for a little keypad for her, oh my God, a keyboard for her iPad so that she could write. And I was like,
Oh,
I'm gonna cry. Like, okay, fine. Like, we could get you a keypad for your birthday, a keyboard for your
oh.
birthday.
Boy, that's really interesting. You need to keep in touch with me and let me know if she does write.
Um, Absolutely. It's kind of funny because like she'll do little picture books or
Mm-hmm.
she'll then write on her iPad and stuff, and it's just you don't realize how much they pay attention until they do something like that. And then you're
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I guess maybe I've actually been doing something that they're finally they're paying attention to something without you having to yell at them to pay attention to it.
Oh, that's hilarious. So, and I just want to share with you a dirty little secret
Ooh,
that a
yes.
lot of people don't know. So, this is just between the two of us. Shh.
100%.
Shh. Okay, yeah. But once you write a book, you usually don't stop at one.
That's okay. The second one's already ready to rock and roll.
I knew it. I tell people it's like eating, potato chips. You can't stop. You can't
You
have just one.
can't. It's once you get over that hurdle of the thought that writing a book is impossible. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't possibly write a book. You're like,
No.
sure you could. Everybody has got so many different experiences. You've got umpteen
So many
different areas of
stories.
specialties and
Yeah.
stories and life happenings. Like everybody could write a book.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just a matter of, getting to a point of, you need a theme or,
Hmm.
just generally, what are you going to do with it? What do you want to do with it? Follow your
Hmm.
heart to say, you know, I want to help the next generation of nurses. I want to help people get through those first 2 years. I want to help support them and let them learn about trusting your gut and how it's
Hmm.
not crazy or woo woo or whatever else. Like this is where, this is us supporting other
Hmm.
nurses. It's no long, it shouldn't, it's no longer nurses eat their young, it's nurses support their young
Hmm.
and or feed their young. As
Hmm.
there's one movement by Teresa Sanderson who's got a whole thing about nurses feed their young, and it's
Hmm.
just fantastic.
Hmm. Okay, so I dare say, out of what you were saying, so basically, follow your heart
Yeah.
and your intuition.
Do it, follow it, because it's going to lead you places that you would have never thought. Like,
Hmm.
I would have never in a million years thought that I would have lectured or been a
Hmm.
guest lecturer. Like, would have never thought in a million years that I could have, the teacher's like, oh, just 3 hours. And I'm like, 3 hours? Like, talk about what? She's like, whatever. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, you need to kind of give me like a lay of the land. She's like, well, your stories. And I'm like, okay, do we want them to stay in nursing or do we not want them to stay in
Right,
nursing? She's like,
right,
no,
because it
no,
could
we
go
want
either
them to
way.
stay. she's like, we want them to stay. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to like tailor my
Yeah.
stories a little bit. But it was in teaching that then led to journals to help support nurses in grief and keeping track of their learning
Hmm.
and building resilience and doing all the buzzword things that then will support the book again and it's all coming together. And then talking with Nurse Blake about potentially teaching for him on
Hmm.
cruises and all these other things. So it's like,
Wow.
okay. Like never once in a million years thought I'd do
Wow.
that. But everyone keeps asking, like, oh, so when are you gonna, leave the bedside? I'm like, I'm not gonna leave the bedside.
Yeah.
That's not, I can see part-time, I can see per
Hmm.
diem.
Hmm. Hmm.
I can't see full-time.
Hmm.
That's it's too much, but like it's in the thick of it. That's where I belong. I just there's an extension to it where I'm
Right.
helping to teach others build careers that they can be proud of and that won't kill them.
Mm. Setting the bar high.
Just a little, just it's just a little thing.
That's so funny. Okay, so Jen, I want to make sure that you know that when that next book comes out, you need to contact me. Okay, so you can come back
Good.
on the show and you can talk about that.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, uh, let the listeners know how could they reach out to you, connect with you, follow you, social media, where can they get the book, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so you can find the book on Amazon. Just search in either Jennifer A. Johnson, RN, or Nursing Intuition, How to Trust Your Gut. Should take you right to it. You can find me at www.rxforgrowth, forgrowth.com. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at ernurse.jen, Jenn. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm probably most active on LinkedIn, to be
Hmm.
honest. Jennifer Johnson, BSCNRN. And to
Hmm.
the nurses, please do not come for me. There's just a ton of Jennifer Johnson, so I had to do it.
Yeah, there are. Okay, so I love that. I just want to reiterate this because I love the RX for growth. I think
Prescription
that's
for
really
growth.
cute little play on because RX is treatment, so treatment for growth. Do you
Prescription
see
for growth.
yourself do you see yourself coaching?
I could. I worry that it's hard to do when you're not like in the actual bedside with somebody, right? So it's hard not to be able to say like, okay, these are clinical symptoms, and that's what I kind of would want more to do. But if people want to reach out just to like, hey, I just need like a head check and like what would you suggest? And I'm happy to give people tips and tricks and all that kind of stuff for sure because like I didn't know how bad burnout could be until I
Mhm.
actually burned out. Like I thought I'd been burned out before, but like man, COVID completely sealed the deal on
Yeah.
that one. So it's you're not alone in
Yeah.
in struggling and trying to keep it all together and keeping the wheels on the bus because you've got kids at home and a spouse and things aren't going well and work's busy and you're chaotic and you're not
Oh,
sleeping and
couldn't
all this
imagine.
kind of stuff. So I hear you and I see you because I've been you.
Mhm. Well, Jen, thank you so much for being on the show. I can't believe how fast the time has gone.
I know.
I know. I mean, I just love listening to you, love talking with you and hearing your story. And again, congratulations on the book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations on saving your sanity. I'm sure there
Yeah.
were times when it was touch and go.
Meds help. Take the meds. It can take up to 6 weeks for
Okay.
antidepressants to work. So, and that's if it works the first time. So please, if you are new to antidepressants, please give them time, give yourself some grace and sleep in the meantime. Sleep is not being lazy. Sleep is
Hmm.
restorative. You have to sleep.
Hmm. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. It's been an honor to speak with you and an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. It's been an absolute blast.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Please do go to Jen's Amazon, check out her book, check her out on LinkedIn. And remember, yeah, take care of yourself. Burnout is real, and nursing is just, it's a wonderful profession, but it really can kind of suck the life out of you. So just use your intuition, take care of yourself, and remember self care is not being selfish.
Yes.
And that is the way of the Femininja.